It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Steelers Afternoon Drive. I am one of your pilots for this pilot episode, Zachary Smith. Joining me, Alan Saunders. We've been talking about this for a while. Glad to finally make it happen. Episode 1, and what I hope is a very fruitful venture for us here on Steelers Afternoon Drive.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. Smitty and I have been talking about doing something together for, I think, what feels like years. I think it has been years, and just super excited to be able to talk about the Steelers every day with a great co-pilot here of our first episode, and love the look of what we've got going on here. And I think we're going to be able to bring everybody what they want, that sort of Steelers news right at the end of your day, end of your work day, cut out, come hang out with us for half an hour or so, and we'll get you caught up on what's going on, have a little fun. I think anybody that follows either of us on social media will hopefully appreciate the presence that we bring. I certainly am a professional reporter that covers the Pittsburgh Steelers in the locker room here at training camp at St. Vincent College every single day. But if you're looking for like super buttoned up seriousness, this may not be the place. But I think we're going to have some fun and talk about football. And I love your work at Around the 412. Obviously a very accomplished podcaster, but I think maybe people don't realize how good of a football mind you are. And I hope we can bring that out a little bit here as well.
I hope so. If everybody's watching this on YouTube, they can see that you literally are at St. Vincent College for training camp. If you're listening, they might not have known that you literally still are sitting right there. Also, though it's scrolling across the bottom, for anybody that's listening, they wouldn't know this as well. At PGH Steelers Now for all Steelers coverage, Alan, Nick, the whole gang there doing great things. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting perspective that we're going to be able to bring to this. You've kind of started to cover some of that, but when you talk about bringing in you, who is obviously around the team every day, can offer that perspective, and then blending it with me from the fan perspective, there's not a whole lot of people that are doing something like this. So I think it's going to be an interesting perspective for both sides and kind of just blending it all together for the people. So that's why I think I'm so excited about it, is just because I don't think that there's many things out there like what we're trying to do.
You know what? It's funny because like as a reporter, I get all the time like fans, or even like not even like random fans, but like people I'm friends with or people that I like went to high school with. Like everybody just wants to like, hey, what's going on with the Steelers? Like tell me. And I think we can kind of capture that energy where it's like, okay, I just got done. Like practice was on the field right behind me here. We talked to Mike Tomlin. We talked to a couple players. Like then I can come on here, and I think, Smitty, you can kind of be like okay, what do the fans want to know? What do people want to know about what happened today? How can I explain what's going on about the Steelers in both an informative way and a fun way, and hopefully like build a little community here?
Well, you mentioned, how the fans are and how my Twitter is. And if people follow me on Twitter, they see how ridiculous some of the stuff that I post is. I mean, I'm right in there with Steelers fans, quoting everything, like the tweet by tweet, what's going on at training camp. So absolutely, I'm ready to provide that perspective for the people of Steelers Nation. Let's maybe start to talk a little bit about today. I mean, not necessarily a whole lot happening, as you said, but you did get to talk to some guys. I know they reported yesterday, but today, the first practice, really not diving in there too much. But, what did you see today? Who did you talk to today? What were some things that you were hearing as we get started here with training camp practices?
So first practice is no pads, and it was actually a pretty short practice. Only went about an hour and a half. Usually they go 2 hours. So a pretty light day of work for the Steelers. Kenny Pickett's first pass was incomplete, broken up by Patrick Peterson. Yep. So, I mean, just put the Super Bowl hopes aside. Everything's over.
Caleb Williams next year. Let's go.
They're going for the number one pick, right? It's all unless you think maybe that means like number one defense, Patrick Peterson, comeback player of the year. That's you could take it however you want. It's really hard to draw like big picture conclusions about the offense or the defense or anything like that when you just maybe 20 or 30 plays of guys that aren't even wearing pads yet. First 4 practices are not in pads. I do think there's still an ability for guys, especially guys maybe that aren't in that first team down the roster a little bit, to stand out. A lot of the vets didn't do much today. Minkah Fitzpatrick did basically nothing. Allen Robinson, I only think he caught one pass. Those older guys are not going to do a lot. But there's a good body of work for some guys that are, especially to me, like the meaty part of the roster, the guys on that second team that, maybe they're going to make the team, maybe they're not, maybe they're going to push a starter. A guy like Elijah Riley, who had an interception today, a guy like Nick Herbig, I thought was really good today in the pass rush, had two. We'll put air quotes around sacks because you can't even get close to the quarterback, let alone touch him. But I called him a sack for him, and I'm an expert, so it just that's the way it happened, right?
Put it down.
But and the other thing happened today, and who I talked to was they put on like a little punting competition. Like that was kind of the meat of practice today, honestly, where we had like 2 or 3 offense, defense, team periods, and then we had about like a really long punting period, just punt, no field goal, all punt. So it was Presley Harvin and Braden Mann kind of back and forth. Harvey was with the ones, and Mann was with the twos. So I guess Press, the incumbent, is ahead. But I mean, it was kind of a showcase, and I talked to Presley a little bit about that, and he said, that's really appreciative because so much of special teams is like in your head. It's mental and not necessarily physical. And most of the time in practice, they kind of stand around and do nothing. Like, I mean, like literally they'll be over in the corner, like putting or something, like trying to kick the ball into the can, whatever. So to get out there like day one and be able to kind of do something, I think it took a little of the jitters away for those guys who incidentally have known each other for like 8 years. Apparently the punting community is pretty small, as I guess one would expect, but they've been in like camps together since going way back to high school. But they kind of knew each other and competed against each other and had been at some camps. But they never really got to know each other personally. Apparently, they've hit it off pretty well. It's going to be a friendly competition. But so that was kind of, to me, one of the – I mean, I think it's really dumb sounding to say like, oh, punter, big deal. But like when in terms of there aren't that many position battles where you're talking about a starting job on this roster right now. That's one of them. So I think it's kind of cool that Tomlin picked that out for day one is like, okay, here, we're going to set the table – on how important punting is going to be for us right now.
I mean, I'm all locked in on the special teams battles, if you will, and just what they're going to do through training camp. Once Christian Kuntz showed up with that massage chair and obviously had his golf clubs and everything like that, I was like, I'm locked in with the special teams this year for training camp.
Well, that was Presley's chair, and Kuntz just delivered it for him, which is the sign of an outstanding long snapper in my mind. Like if you're the long snapper and you're delivering your punter's massage chair to training camp, like I feel like that's like a 90 grade in PFF right there. Like because like the ball, like everybody can snap the same. That's where you separate the average long snapper from the exceptional long snapper, way above and beyond dedication from Christian Kuntz. I talked to Christian yesterday. So I was at Coach's Bottle Shop in Banksville, Dormont area. If you're from the South Hills, you probably know where I'm talking about, next to Coons, great Pittsburgh institution. But so I'm going to Coach's. I was having a lunch meeting, and Christian Kuntz's jersey is hanging from the rafters at Kuntz's Bottle Shop. First of all, only in Pittsburgh would the fans be insane enough to purchase and hang the jersey of a long snapper anywhere. Like only Steelers fans could do that. But so I asked Christian about it, and he said, well, those guys are crazy, but I used to work there. He worked there when I guess he was in high school or something.
Yeah.
And so Christian Kuntz is the embodiment of like Steelers fans. Like he is like, if you pulled a guy out of the crowd and was like, you get to be on the Steelers for 2 years, that is what Christian Kuntz is like. Like he is legitimate. Like he grew up as big of a Steeler fan as every person in the audience. And he just sort of gets to live his dream every day, being a long snapper. Mike Tomlin likes to give him a hard time because he's like this like celebrity at a position where nobody should care about the long snapper, but he's a great dude, and those guys have a lot of fun. I really enjoy talking to them. But yeah, he had a blast. He said he had his golf clubs. He said he just played Oakmont. Did not have a lot of fun playing Oakmont. I don't get the sense that Christian is some sort of golf savant. You know, there's some guys like Patrick Peterson played in the American Century Championship out in Lake Tahoe. Like Pat Pete can shoot. Like he's a legit good golfer. I don't get the sense that's where Christian is in his game, but he said he's going to try to play Laurel while he's out here at training camp. Maybe he'll like that a little bit better. Oakmont might be a little too challenging.
I mean, he's at the clubs with him, right? So like, he's going to be able to get
in his truck. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure he was not the only guy that brought clubs, but I just happened to be there when he unloaded.
It was the most highlighted, at least that I've seen. So funny story real quick on Christian Kuntz. I ended up helping two of his buddies get to a Steeler game last year where he wasn't able to get them tickets. I got a DM from somebody that went with him to Duquesne, and I was like, what is this? And then helped them get 2 tickets, and they were sitting like the 500 level, but they were just happy to be there. So,
well, when we're gonna tell a story, like Christian, little known fact about Christian Kuntz. I mean,
this is the Christian Kuntz episode.
I think people know that he played at Duquesne and that he was a linebacker, before he became a long snapper. But when he signed with the Steelers, it was not clear that he was like definitely going to be a long snapper only and not a linebacker. And he signed like the third week of training camp. He signed the first time he came to Pittsburgh off the street, and they played the Carolina Panthers in that week 4 preseason game. Like 4 days later, he ended up playing like half the game on defense, had like 3 tackles and a sack. They gave him number 99, which is clearly a linebacker number. So like if you find on YouTube, you can find them. There's like Christian Kuntz defense highlights from one Steelers preseason game, which I always think is like so random and funny. But I think those days are beyond him. I think he's purely a long snapper now, but great dude and great dude to talk to, obviously.
You mentioned, like that's really the telltale sign of a long snapper, what he did for Presley and stuff like that. Maybe that's what they should base the Pro Bowl and, all pro voting on, because how else do you pick those guys? Find out what those guys are doing in training camp for their boys, and that's how the voting should go.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate being able to vote for awards, but sometimes I'm like, how do I know who the best long snapper is? I don't know.
Right. You did mention that there's, few and far between potentially this year in terms of like actual competition. And one that I know that the fans are obviously going to be super interested in is at left tackle with 1st round pick Broderick Jones, obviously incumbent Dan Moore Jr. Again, not much to read into on day one. The only thing that I really saw of Broderick Jones was a short clip of him in Washington doing a combo block. Anything there to talk about in terms of Broderick Jones?
I mean, Moore's with the 1s, Jones is with the 2s. I think that's probably going to be the case for a little while. I didn't really see, and again, no pads. So the offensive line is probably the one place it's really hard to tell what's going on there. But nothing really stood out to me one way or the other in terms of Broderick Jones. Dan Moore, I just think not necessarily on the field today, but the look of him, like he has really transformed his body. He looks like jacked. Like, not to say like the offensive linemen are obviously very, very strong individuals, but like usually, the defensive guys are kind of like real chiseled and you think about Aaron Donald, right? Like that's kind of like usually what but you don't see offensive linemen that look like that. Usually Dan Moore is put some serious work into his body this offseason. I think he's going to make this really difficult on Broderick Jones. And Jones has this really high upside, and he's obviously already a very good run blocker. But he's not refined as a pass blocker. He didn't play that many games at Georgia, so I think there's going to be a pretty steep learning curve for him. I think Dan Moore is going to make this hard. Like Omar said today when we talked to Omar Khan this afternoon. We drafted him in the 1st round for a reason. He's going to get there eventually, but he's going to have to earn it. And I think, that process might happen here at training camp and might happen throughout the course of the season. They have that early bye again. If they want to use that to insert him in the lineup at that point, I don't know. I think they have some options there.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to keep, pounding the same drum here because I feel like it's kind of gotten regurgitated at this point in terms of Broderick, but
we'll beat him. We'll beat the draft. That's fine. Whatever we got to do.
But, I think everybody's kind of talked about Broderick's development and how he's not refined as a pass blocker. And then you look at a guy in New York that just got paid, and Andrew Thomas, and kind of like the same thing there. And is that the potential trajectory with Broderick? I'm there though. Like Derek Bell and I, pre-draft talking about it, we kind of came up with the same thing. It was like, if you draft this guy, you're not drafting him for right now. This is, I understand you're making the selection in 2023, but it's for 2024, 2025.
10 years. I mean, that's what, if you're drafting an offensive lineman in the 1st round, like your expectation is that guy's get 10-year starter for you. And so I don't think it matters if he starts week 1, week 3, week 6, week 16. Like I just it doesn't matter to me. He will get there eventually. I believe in the player, but there is definitely going to be a learning curve. I really think that when we do get some like O-line, D-line one-on-ones, like I think TJ and Alex Highsmith are going to make
they're going to take his lunch early on.
I mean, I think like they do that to Chooks still, and it's his fourth year, and Chooks is a very good pass blocking tackle. So yeah, I think there could be some embarrassment in his near future, and that's not a bad thing. That's the whole point of competition at training camp, is to let these guys go at each other and make each other better. It's one of the things that makes this process special and fun for all of us. And so I'm really looking forward to some of those one-on-ones. We didn't get much of any of that today, but I think those are coming, and they're going to be entertaining. That's for sure.
The most intriguing thing to me, totally switching to the other side of the football now, is the secondary, because I just wonder how it's all going to play out when they're in, nickel and dime, and how do things work out? How early do we see Joey Porter Jr. take on a massive role for this team? Patrick Peterson on the total opposite end of being a rookie, the elder statesman of that room, still playing at a pretty high level. I'm excited about the addition of him. Didn't play at all. 0 snaps in the slot last year, yet we expect to see him quite a bit there in 2023. Again,
he had more than that today.
Keep in mind.
He had more than that today. More than 0 in the slot today. In fact, I think maybe the first play he was in the slot. Joey Porter Jr. out there outside of him. That's going to happen a lot. I mean, I think they're serious about moving him around the formation, and that he is not going to be just an outside cornerback.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I was going with this. Like, I think that we're going to see a lot of moving pieces within that secondary, depending on what package they're in. So you mentioned we saw Joey Porter Jr. right away on the outside. So, I'm curious to see, as we get deeper into training camp, what this looks like and all the moving pieces. And it's so intriguing to me because of the state of that cornerback room. Like the only, true slot corner, really, what Duke Dawson actually opened up, but played a bunch of snaps in the slot too. But like Shannon Sullivan, who they got from Minnesota. Yeah. It's just, there's not like, a set in stone guy there. The days of Mike Hilton are obviously long gone.
Elijah Riley is a guy that he's listed as safety. He's played a ton of slot corner. He played there again today. So he played like safety with the 2s and then slot with the 3s. And he had the only interception today. Picked off Mason Rudolph, who had a ridiculous streak of not throwing an interception last year and threw one on about his 3rd pass this year, looking for Darnell Washington. I'm not sure that I'm going to put all that on Mason Rudolph, because the ball was about 8 yards from where Darnell Washington was. So either they were just not on the same page, or a young guy ran the wrong route. I don't know. But Elijah Riley was where the ball went, and he made the pick and made a nice return as well. Like, he's a playmaker. I think, people kind of, because he came in camp late last year, I don't really think people knew that much about him. He played when they had all those injuries in the secondary, like against Buffalo and Philadelphia, and they didn't do that well. So it's not like he had this like big, like, hello, welcome to Pittsburgh moment. He was just kind of there. But I think, like, compared to some of those other guys we talked about, like Dawson and Sullivan, and even like Trey Norwood, who's been around here a little bit, people maybe a little more familiar with, he just feels more like a playmaker to me. He gets his nose in there, makes hits. He got his hands on the ball a couple times. I think I made a 53-man roster projection at the site today, and I have him on it. I think he makes the team and plays, like, not just there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think really the only taste that the Steelers fans truly got of him last year was that game against Tampa, where like everybody was out and they just had a patchwork secondary. James Pierre, CB1 for that game, playing 100%
Pierre
of
had
the
a pass
snaps.
breakup today too. He looked all right out there.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a guy you like having around. I feel like is a nice little, like number 2 or 3 option on the boundary. Like, I feel like he's a nice player to have on the roster. So we'll see. Days like today can be nice, though. You said it wasn't very eventful. That's not always the case. It could be very eventful, like something that happened up in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow going down, non-contact, holding his calf. They've come out and said it's a calf injury. He was already wearing a sleeve on that calf. Obviously, we don't have all the information right now to be able to discuss this, but I mean, that is one of those things. You see that cart come out, you see the video, and you're just holding your breath if you're a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals.
I mean, or just in general, like of good NFL football.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Joe Burrow's one of the best. Obviously Steelers fans probably not looking for the Bengals to succeed, but man, you hate to have it come that way, right? I mean, he's a great guy and a great competitor. And I think if you're the Steelers, you don't want to beat the Bengals without him, right? You want to play that guy. You want to test yourself against that guy. Calf injury, they can linger. Probably looking at, at least 6 weeks from now. It probably won't impact the Steelers, right? They don't face the Bengals until November 26th. Thanksgiving weekend is the first time we see Cincinnati in Cincinnati. So it's pretty hard to, unless it's like calf and knee, right, where it's like surgery season kind of deal. It looks like, again, with limited information right now, that he's probably going to be able to return at some point, and will probably be before the Steelers play him. But man, does that change the perception of the division, right? I think people have been talking about this division like, well, it's clearly the Bengals, and then let's talk about the pros and cons of the other three teams. If the Bengals have to play a significant amount of the season without Joe Burrow, or even a few weeks without Joe Burrow, I'm not sure that they are then like head and shoulders away. Like, could we have like a 4-way tie at 10-7? Like that's where I feel like this division is headed right now. Like, they're all so evenly matched, and kind of the one thing that really made Cincinnati stand out as better than the rest now becomes a question mark.
I am a relatively huge fan of chaos, so I'm kind of down for that. At the same time, I'm already on 2 different blood pressure medications. I do not want to add a third, so I'm iffy on if I want that whole 4 teams at 10-7 thing going on.
I think it could be fun, but I don't know if I'd recommend it for the blood pressure purposes. We need. I like figuring out playoff possibilities, like all the the Steelers need to beat this team by 36 points, and then someone else needs to tie. Like those are always a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's turn our attention to the man in charge of Steelers training camp up there, Mike Tomlin, because for a while it had seemed like it had been put out that an extension was likely. Now, you heard Tomlin talk about it yesterday. You heard Omar talk about it today. Not so sure that's coming.
Well, I guess it depends on how you want to take the words there. I still think an extension is likely, just likely not this season, right? I think
yes.
The thing that Mike Tomlin said was like, I'm not even worried about it. Whatever. I don't get the sense that. I think if Mike Tomlin walked into Art Rooney's office tomorrow and was like, I really need a contract extension, there would be one. I don't think he feels that way. He's been around a while. I'm not sure he's in a big hurry to sign another deal right now. If you're Mike Tomlin and you look at what the team just did with a 9-win season and a rookie quarterback, wouldn't you have a little more leverage if you wait until after this season? It looks like this team could be pretty good. Maybe get things looking like they're on the up and up, and maybe you cash in a big way. I just don't think he is that focused on it. The big thing I took away from that conversation yesterday was Mike Tomlin saying, I haven't thought about it. And I believe him. It's impossible to believe coaches because they lie in public constantly. And don't get me wrong, Mike Tomlin definitely lies in public all the time, like almost every coach does. But he's right about that. The guy is just so locked into football. I don't think he thinks that much about. He's not worried about other stuff on a day-to-day basis. And the other things that he does worry about are his kids and his daughter and what's going on with that and his family. And he's just a locked in guy. He gets here and this is his job and he's focused on it. And I don't think he's super worried about what comes next. He's also, as he said yesterday, he's already got a lot of money. I don't think he's begging for scraps here. I think he's a confident guy, and if he wants a new deal, he'll get a new deal, and it's going to happen eventually, but it doesn't sound like it's going to happen this offseason.
To have that much security in your position and just know where you're at, and also to hear Omar talk about it, he's like, yeah, we're going to be here for a long time together though. To hear Omar say that, it's like, okay, well, obviously, those are both the long-term guys in their positions.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think it comes from the Steelers don't fire coaches. They're an organization that has had a lot of success with that tactic. I don't see any reason why they would want to change it. But also, I mean, just look at Mike Tomlin's stature as a head coach in this league. If the Steelers decided they wanted to fire him or not offer him a new contract, he would have a new job in 6 hours. Like that's where he is in his career. It really baffles me the way that Mike Tomlin was talked about by some Steelers fans. I understand that the results have not been the way that everyone wants them to be the last few years. But I think the thing that a lot of people lose track of, and it's a very interesting contrast right now, because you see what's happening in New England with Bill Belichick, where things are going badly. Him and the owner are kind of like fighting through the media. And there's this implication, like he's saying, oh, money is an issue. And the owner's like, I give you everything you want, dude. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Where if you look at Mike Tomlin, like, he does not, first of all, doesn't operate that way. He doesn't rub people the wrong way. He's not a jerk. He's not going to end up out of a job because of a personality conflict. But he also has never pushed for that level of control. He has always had a very powerful general manager and a very involved team president that are making decisions with him. So when things don't go I don't think anyone in the Steelers organization, anyone in the Rooney family, is looking at the last 3 years of the Steelers and be like, well, this is Mike Tomlin's fault, because they know, like, they were in those decisions with him. They were made together. They were Steelers decisions arrived at with that group together. And so it's what could you blame him for? I just think like that, like, it's not like it's pretty clear to me anyway that the failings of this team, if you want to call them that, of the last few years, are their players weren't good enough. And like, that's not on him. That's on the group. And you have a changeover at general manager. I do think some things got beyond Kevin Colbert, as he had been in his job for a very long time. And they got some fresh blood in there in Omar. And I think it's going really, really well so far. But, it's different when, Art and Mike and Kevin Colbert are in the room making decisions together. Then they're not going to both turn to Mike and go, this is all your fault, when things don't go well. Like, that's not how it's going to work. And so I think that just leads to a completely different conversation in terms of like what the head coach is really responsible for. And I don't think that Steelers fans really get that all the time. I think a lot of people are familiar with, like, hey, Chuck Noll, he was the emperor, right? Like, what he said goes. He cut players, he drafted players, he had kind of final say over everything that happened with his team. And that is not how these Steelers are run. Like, Mike Tomlin obviously has a big influence, but he does not have final say on like most things, let alone like not even everything. And so I think there's this like blame game where everyone wants to say like, oh, it's all Tomlin's fault, and it's not. It's just sort of the cycle of the team. They had to go through a rebuild at the end of the tenure of a longtime franchise quarterback, and it sure seems like they're swinging up on the other side of it. But I don't think that he's out there looking for all the responsibility, and so he shouldn't get all the blame when things don't go well either.
I think it's so interesting because, we've thrown the words around, like not having a very good roster, talking about moving on from the longtime franchise quarterback and kind of having to do a little bit of a retool, rebuild, whatever. And it's like 9-8 last year, because I don't even know if we should include the 8-8 2019 where you lose Ben. Could be the low point of this.
Like that was an absurd job of coaching. Like, let's just say that, right? Like, and these last, I think this team, in fact, I was just on the VSiN gambling show this morning, and we're talking about Steelers win totals. They've gone over their Vegas win total 3 years in a row. So that means that the team that was on paper, the team that was on the field was better than the team that was on paper 3 years in a row. And like, look, gambling is obviously like there's some you're trying to entice the audience sometimes to bet in a certain way, but at the end of the day, those guys, they want to get those numbers right. They're pretty smart. If one team is going over 3 years in a row, the team's probably pretty well coached. Like, that's a pretty good sign that they are getting more out of their players than pretty smart people expected them to. And so I think he doesn't get nearly enough credit for what has gone right over this time, even though they haven't won a playoff game. I also think that no playoff game thing is such a misnomer too. Like, if they had not won their division in 2020 and instead played a wild card game that they won, would anyone be like super happier about that outcome? Like, who cares? Like a playoff game.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of the reporters here at training camp have been like, hey, is it time for this team to win a playoff game? And every single player has been like, playoff game? We don't care about winning a playoff game. Like, we want to win a Super Bowl. You have to win playoff games to get there, sure. But like, that's not going to make anyone in this organization happy about this season or feel some kind of better about it in any way. Like, it's not a thing that they're focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that I'm bringing the fan perspective, but you're not getting the angry, hate Tomlin fan perspective.
Maybe what we should do is like, you should like bring a different hat, okay? And then you could just like, okay, here's like different hat Smitty, right? And then different hat Smitty is the hater.
Wait,
right?
Actually, I gotta show the people something in a sec, because I looked over and I was like, maybe I should throw my cowboy hat on. But right next to the cowboy hat, I got sent a gift from a Twitter follower that came today.
All right, let's see it.
So I found a jersey on eBay of Pittsburgh Steelers legend, an absolute legend. I'm not going to say the name yet. I'm just going to reveal the jersey. But I was going to buy this jersey. Somebody responded and said, no, wait, don't. I have that exact same jersey. I'll just send it to you. And I want everybody to be very clear on this and listen to what I'm about to say, because they appreciate my tweets so much.
Oh, my goodness. That's beautiful.
Amos Zaraway. For the people that aren't watching and only listening, it's an Amos Zaraway Pittsburgh Steelers jersey.
That's beautiful.
Maybe I'll throw it on for episode 2.
But we need a hater outfit, and then maybe you could read bad tweets in the hater outfit, and then we can address negative perspective. And don't get me wrong, like there are plenty of valid criticisms where we can talk real ball about like what this team does well and does not so well. But there's some of it that is not necessarily grounded in reality, and I'm fine with addressing that too.
We've thrown out that idea of finding a way to incorporate those types of things in the show going forward. So whether it's on like a Tuesday takes or Fan Friday, some way that we're going to end up
have like comments and you want to like, we'll read them on the show. We'll talk about them. We'll make fun of you. Maybe we'll say that you're genius knower of ball and we respect you. I don't know, but I think that is one of the big things that I want, is to find a way to connect to more Steelers fans and build a community of people that want to have fun and talk about football. And I think we can do that here.
Absolutely. Alan, you got anything else as we come to the end of our drive here?
I think I do want to, on the first episode, shout out like a lot of people that helped put this together. And Joe Steigerwald, who's our like do it all at Steelers Now and Pittsburgh Sports Now, he like did, and his band recorded the intro music, which is actually like a whole 2-minute song that's awesome. We'll find a way to play the whole thing at some point. And Brandon Rossai was an awesome radio broadcaster and public address announcer. He did the voiceover for us. Dylan Winters did the logo, which is beautiful. I love it. Sort of inspired by those like old school Steelers tailgater vans that you would see in the parking lots around Three River Stadium in my youth. Anyway, I'll age myself, but it's beautiful, and so happy to have that, and just really excited to do this every day. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. This is also, since you are the one that is connected to those people, this will be my thank you to those people as well. Hopefully they're watching, listening to this.
And Jeff Hartman with the Fans First Sport Network, they're going to help us distribute this audio version. I think today's episode is mostly going to be on YouTube, but we will get this pushed out there to like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that stuff, so you can find it anywhere you find any other podcast.
Absolutely. So going along with that, be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment down below, whether it's this episode or in the future episodes. Be sure to leave a 5-star review on any listening platform that you might be getting the podcast on, all that good stuff. We should probably tell the people where they can find us.
Yeah, I mean, at @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, same handle on Instagram, although I don't post there that often, and SteelersNow.com, at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter, and Steelers Now on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching this, then you probably found that already, but that's where all my stuff is. And of course, Nick Faribaugh, who I'm sure is going to be on here at some point, filling in from now and then, because I'm in a lot of places a lot of times, but we'll get them on here for sure. And you got a lot going on too, so
Well, big shout out to Nick as well. This is a good day to give him a shout out with him, becoming full-time at the site. So
full-time at Steelers now, announced this morning, and super fired up to have him with us all the time. And he's great, man. He's a fantastic young reporter, and super excited to have him around.
And you can find me at Zachary Smith PGH. The PGH, Alan, I don't know if I ever told you this. It was literally because I saw you had PGH in your handle. I ended up putting it in mine. As opposed to just having 412, I was like, I'm going with the PGH from here on out.
Well, the 412 is kind of a thing for you, though.
It was, yes. And it still is with around the 412. But yeah, I don't know. There was something about the PGH that just looks better as opposed to having letters and the numbers. Just all letters.
It's a good look. I've had it for a while. I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, we're going to get out of here. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, and catch us on the next one. We'll be right back here tomorrow for you guys with another episode. So again, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. For Smitty, for Alan, we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary